Hey, welcome to another episode of Inquiring Minds. I'm Steve Harper, and with me is my amazing co-host, Donna Carlin. Donna, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. This one is going to be a fun one to dive into. Maybe, I don't know, it could be a little scary. I'm not sure. Let's see. What are we
Well,
talking
it's
about?
in a way, it's a continuation of what we discussed last week
Yeah.
on mistakes and our viewpoint of mistakes. So this it's sort of a little bit of a twist to it. So it's there's always going to be someone that questions your value, minimizes your talents, and overlooks your skills, not to mention sells you short.
Yes,
Don't
yes, and
let that
yes.
person be you.
Big yes. Huge yes.
Huge yes. Don't let that person be you. I'm telling you. There you go.
Ah, yeah, but it's amazing how often that is us, right? It ends up being us. We're our own worst critics on every level, right? But at the end of the day, it's also it's easy when we have that natural tendency to buy into that as individuals in ourselves that when we hear it from outside sources, then it's just like doubly compounded, right? And I know for my own purposes, it's incredibly dispiriting and certainly a knock to the confidence in a lot of ways, which just tends to reinforce, especially if you already have these challenges that you're dealing with internally. When you hear it from somebody else, like, well, there you go. See, exactly what you thought of yourself is exactly right. And that's not actually true. so,
Exactly. Yeah.
so it's how do you insulate yourself from the outside critics while also building up an insulation from the inside critic? I think is the bigger question.
So, first of all, before we get into that, for all of us, myself included, who said something horrible to ourselves this week, it's time to apologize to ourselves. To say, sorry, not going to do that again, or at least going to watch that we hope not to do that again, whatever word you want to use, at least to acknowledge that we spoke to ourselves in a way that's totally disrespectful.
Yeah,
And I think we need to apologize to ourselves for that. We can't expect others to treat us with the ultimate of respect if we don't do it to ourselves.
very
First
true.
thing. You know, one of my mottos, I've said this many times, what somebody else thinks of me is none of my business. If I live my life with integrity and, through my value system, because you can't be, the perfect person for everyone in this world. Beating yourself up just doesn't help. You can't be what everyone expects and wants you to be. So, how do you turn that around? It's recognizing the fact that you're not perfect. Like, holy cow, who'd have thunk it, right?
Yeah,
And you literally celebrate your weaknesses and say, I suck at this.
yeah,
The smallest thing, I used to dread bumping into somebody that I knew and I couldn't remember their name. How often does that happen? And so you say to yourself, idiot, you know this person. Why don't you remember their names? And you
yep.
beat yourself up or you avoid them altogether and you duck behind a piece of furniture, whatever it is, because you can't introduce them to your partner. You can't, approach them saying, Steve, it's so good to see you. And then dread somebody saying, how do you know this person? And you
Yeah.
can't even place that, right?
Well, I
That's
don't
like
know. I
the
mean,
smallest
could it be more
example.
awkward to see Donna diving behind a couch? I mean,
Yeah, probably.
I mean, the visual imagery that I've got going on right now of you avoiding these scenarios is quite fun, actually.
Great. And now all I do is say, I absolutely suck at remembering names. Could you refresh my memory? And if I forget it 10 minutes down the road, that's a direct flaw in my brain
Yep.
and I'm learning to live with it.
Yeah.
That's what I say straight out. And so often people say, me too.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, you want my phone number from when I was 5 years old? I'll tell you that phone number because numbers I remember. Names I cannot remember.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to beat myself up anymore. These are things, though, we do exponentially in our lives. We
Yeah.
focus on what we don't do well and we beat ourselves up for it. So now I'm very proud to say I could recite pretty much every credit card that I have by memory, my social insurance number, all of that by memory. I don't have to look at anything. Names I really struggle with.
Yeah.
So help me out here. Rather than say you're an idiot, you can't remember somebody's name, just help me out here and
Yeah.
refresh my memory.
Yeah.
It's
No, I think that's
it,
great. I mean, I think it lets you off the hook, and it also shows a bit of humility to the other person, that you're not trying to be something that you're not, like trying to, you're grasping at straws. You're working, enough towards trying to figure it out while you're in the middle of that introduction or reintroduction or that conversation. And that's even more embarrassing when because when it does click and all of a sudden, like, oh, wait, I do know you. Well, yeah, you just acted like you knew me like three minutes
right.
ago. So.
Be genuine. But think about it. How often do we minimize our talents? I could say to somebody, it blows me away how you could do this, this, and this. And they look at me, oh, it's nothing.
Yeah.
How often do you hear that? Oh,
Oh yeah.
what's the big deal? 100 other people could do it. Minimizing your talents rather than say, thank you. I appreciate you seeing that in me.
Well,
How
yeah,
hard is
that
it
that's
when
that inner
somebody to
critic
say that?
though, that you run up against, that you feel like whatever your skill set is, that it of course is not as good as somebody else's skill set, right? And I often get a lot of compliments because of one of my unique abilities is to find that unique connection thread that I think that I have with not only individuals that I meet or engage with, but how or why they need to know other people, and sort of interlace that in a and I used to, people would be like, you just have like this magic ability to connect people. And it's like, no, this is just like simple, easy stuff. But what I wasn't recognizing is it is, a pretty hefty effort. And I have to embrace that that's a skill and a talent. And now I put it forward when I talk to people is, yes, that's one of my superpowers. That's my genius in terms of finding ways for other people to connect and engage and see and explore the possibilities. That's what I love doing. But when you minimize it, and you minimize it not only in your own thinking, but you also then put it out there verbally for other people, then maybe it isn't that special. And you really are taking the power of what you're doing away. Just like you said, someone having the ability to do, something, and they're like, oh no, that's not a big deal. It really is. And you have to appreciate the fact that you in this moment, in this little space of time, did whatever it is that you did because you were great at whatever it was that you're great at. And I think that that's pretty critical. And the more that you can be kind to yourself and embrace those things and be able to give yourself those kudos and even those occasional pats on the back for doing something great, becomes so much easier than to not only do that and feel great about it internally, but then to accept the praise from other people and celebrate those wins when somebody recognizes, your special talent or your skill or ability.
That's it. And, that feedback is invaluable because
Yeah.
they're seeing something in you that you might not be blatantly obvious about. And they're able to highlight that you could, learn to understand that this is something that you excel at. People recognize you excel at it. Why not do more of it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really good. And I think, your reminder, I mean, it starts internally, right? Your ability to um, you know, have that amount of self-care and mental self-love. I think it's super critical because we already know inherently how much negativity there is outside of ourselves that we'll be
Oh, yeah.
faced with. And sometimes what that is, when I look at it, it's building your armor from the inside out, right? And really when whatever your worst critic can say or think about you, when you give yourself the freedom to not worry about it, like you say, hey, it's none of my business what their opinion of me is, that is just so much weight and baggage that you just remove from yourself, from your life, from the constant worry and stress about, am I doing things right, or am I making the right impression, or what's that person thinking about me? When you can say, look, you've got this, you're doing a great job, you're in control, you're gonna, you're showing up and being the authentic version of yourself, and you're doing a great job at it. When you can have that ability to kind of put that suit of armor on, then it really doesn't matter what everybody else thinks, which is amazing, because when you get to that point where you feel Like I don't need to worry about what everybody else thinks. I only need to worry about what I feel, and I want to be keeping that in constant check and in positivity. The great thing about that is then you take chances and risks that you probably wouldn't otherwise, and you become more of who you really were intended to be out there to the rest of the world.
Exactly right. That's the whole point. And you're not going to do things perfectly all the time. We discussed that last week
Yeah,
about making
mistakes. Yeah,
mistakes. Look at a mistake as something to play with, and then say, ask yourself, like, what do I innately do that I don't even think about? To use a music analogy, which I've done, quite often. I was talking to somebody when Ben Zander came to speak at a conference, and I had worked under Ben when he was a guest conductor. Just an amazing musician and teacher, just an amazing teacher. And, he said to me, what does an orchestra need a conductor for? I mean, the musicians know their parts, they know how to play. And I said, you'll see after Ben does his thing on stage. And then we'll have that discussion,
yep,
because this was somebody in technology sector and didn't have that understanding of the role of conductor, which is to bring all the egocentrical talent together to play as one unit.
yep,
More than that, though, he helped them get from proficiency to animation. And why I'm bringing that up is I said to this client of mine from Intel, actually, um, if you notice, musicians could proficiently be good. They could learn a part. Mechanically, it's done really well. There's something missing. Those with that innate natural talent will bring their personalities to the table. It's going to be an extension of who they are as much as what they're doing. That's
yeah,
the difference between proficient and an innate talent. It's at one with who you are, and you bring that extra something, and you feel it. You absolutely feel it in your being. That's We all have these talents. I remember my brother saying all the talent, the artistic talent went into my sister. Looked at him like he was crazy. He invented some surgical interventions that have changed surgery for the world. It's unbelievable what he did. That's creative.
yeah.
He doesn't see himself as creative. He sees himself as mechanically proficient. He's a brilliant surgeon and does surgery very successfully, and all the innovation he's brought to surgery. Absolutely. Um, I look at it as a talent. He doesn't see that in himself.
Hmm.
So it's amazing, right? If you look at yourself through the eyes of measuring up, all of that, you're not going to pay attention to your talents and
Yeah.
your strengths and that which you could become absolutely masterful at. And he's been honored all over the world for the work that he's brought to the table. Does he look at himself through those eyes? No, he really doesn't.
Well,
So
maybe
it's
maybe that's a really good question to ask our audience is what do you want to be masterful in and what do you want to be known for? And are you living up to that level of expectation that you set for yourself? In order to feel that and to really embrace that, you have to sort of take on that internal critic, really. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to insulate yourself in some capacity to be able to excel at whatever it is that you do and not minimize the greatness that you bring to whatever that is, a particular task, your ability to communicate and engage with people, the type of leader that you might be, or in your case of your brother, right? The kind of surgeon that he became and the value that he has bestowed upon the world because he leaned into that. Even though maybe mentally he's minimizing it to a degree, I think if he really kind of pulled that out of the box and kind of looked at it from all sides and saw it through sort of the lens that you just presented right there, he would recognize himself as very much the composer or the maestro or the artist that really comes to the table with a very unique and very powerful skill set.
so I would actually slightly change the wording to, are you honoring your innate talents
Yes, I like
to
that even
such an
better.
extent that you let them out to impact the world? You know, the world needs you, so be more of you.
Yeah,
Every person has some innate talent to bring to the table, give yourself permission to recognize it, to hone it, and to share it.
Yeah.
And, that's a whole different ballgame for you. You will literally land in a place that you need to be in because you are letting those talents come out and to shine.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well said. Well, this is, I think we could continue to talk about this, and we may in a follow up episode, but this one really got me thinking, and hopefully it did as well for our audience. We'd love to hear what your thoughts and feedback are on this particular episode. Donna, how could people become involved and get their thoughts out to us, as well as maybe start the conversation so we can dive a little bit deeper into this, via one of our platforms?
Definitely join our Facebook group, Inquiring Minds with Donna Carlin and Steve Harper, and let us know your thoughts because we publish all our podcasts on there and their YouTube videos, I should say. And let us know how to take the conversation further, or if you want us to discuss something else. We'd love to hear from you because we want it to impact you.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Well, we are completely honored that you guys tune into this, whether you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, or you're hearing the audio on any of the various podcast platforms. We recognize that this show is making a difference because we're hearing it from you. And we love the fact that you're participating along with us, and that these topics and conversations are actually extending well beyond the show. They're going to the dinner table. They're going out to dinner with friends. They're being put on the table for team meetings. And these topics are getting the exposure that we had hoped they would, because they're really meaningful conversations to be having. But most importantly, we're hearing from individuals that are really benefiting from this, from what the topics are in terms of the inner dialogue that they need to be having with themselves, just like today's episode. So we're super grateful that you tune into Inquiring Minds. We will be back next week with another episode of Inquiring Minds. But until then, Donna, take care. Don't be your inner critic, be your, go embrace and lean into your internal genius, and be the master that you're destined to be.
Right back at you.
All right. Take care.
You too.